Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you so much.
How was it? Did you do
It
anything
was
fun?
it was good. Friday I went axe throwing, which was fun.
Okay,
Yeah,
good,
that was fun. And then I went out to dinner on Saturday, and that was it. Kind of low key, but had a good time. I enjoyed myself.
good to hear. Well, thank you for
Thank you.
joining me.
You're
We should
welcome.
have done this a while back. I always thought to like reach out to you, and it just my days get crazy.
No
Um,
worries.
but
Thanks for the invite.
it's such an important topic. Like I get questions and even with myself, I still don't really fully understand. The
Okay.
whole how it
Yeah.
works on the legal side when it comes to like property, owning assets, passing them down to your family.
Yes.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your law firm, and then we
Sure.
can jump into the questions?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sabine Franco. Those of you who don't know me, also known as Sabine the Purpose Lawyer. I'm an attorney and I am also an entrepreneur. I run a law firm called Franco Law Firm. We've been in business for about 8 years and we focus on asset protection. So that's anything from protecting your business to your real estate to any other types of property that you can own. And we want to basically help our clients pass it on to the next generation. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Very important. Yes.
super red here. Okay.
Great, great. Oh, thank you for the quick intro.
Sure.
So I'm going to just start right off the top. So a lot of people think that by having like a power of attorney or a handwritten letter is enough
Right.
for like passing on your assets. So can you explain to us a little bit about that and what the myth is behind that? Because obviously that's not the legal way to do it.
Correct. Yes, correct. So a power of attorney is actually something that allows you to give someone else control during your lifetime. So it actually has no effect once the person passes away. The power of attorney is like has no power,
Got
right?
it.
And so, but it's an important document. It's an important tool to have because if something were to happen to you while you're alive, like say you're in the hospital or you're incapacitated, meaning you can't make any decisions for yourself, it will allow you to give that authority to somebody else. So for instance, if
Okay.
you to pay your mortgages, if you
Right, right.
to, collect rents and things like that and deal with any sort of taxes or other issues, you have somebody else that can do that for you. That's what that
Okay.
power of attorney allows you to do.
Got
Um, but in terms of, handwritten, whether it could be handwritten or not, typically you're going to want the power of attorney to be typed up because it has to have certain language in it and it
it.
has to, really state certain things in order for it to be legally accepted on by someone else to be able to rely on it. Now, with a will, which you kind of mentioned.
Oh, okay. Just coming back. Just reconnecting. Hi.
I don't know why Instagram is behaving like this today.
Instagram is being, a spoiled brat today.
So rude.
Doesn't want to listen. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the handwritten aspect, certain states will not allow for a handwritten will, right?
Okay.
They just won't accept it as being valid because each state has its requirements on how a will needs to be signed, for it to be valid.
Makes
Some
sense.
states will, and some states won't. Like a good example is actually Aretha Franklin. She didn't have an actual typed up will.
Right.
I
That's
know.
crazy. Oh,
She had a couple of handwritten wills that one of them they found in her couch. And so like to determine if it's actually her, if it's like if that was her, wishes and things like that, could be a long process in court and they may
right.
not fully rely on that document. So I would say you want to if this is something you were looking to do on your own,
Mm-hmm.
I would say look up for the state that you're in what the requirements are. Usually
Okay.
you have to have a witness or two witnesses. Some
Right.
states require it to be notarized, things like that. So you just want to
Okay.
make sure you're meeting the requirements of the state where you actually live in.
Got it. All right. Got
Mhm.
it. And for you guys that are tuning in, so if you have a specific question about your state, most of the audience is from the tri-state, so which
Okay.
is great. So I know
Yeah.
you're based in New York, but you also work sometimes in Jersey, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they can reach out to you for questions. So make sure that you
Okay.
reach out to Sabine with any specifics on your state.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I've known elders, especially in the Spanish community.
Mhm.
They don't really they don't want to plan for death because, you know, it's the whole like, I don't want to plan for it because I'm going to jinx myself kind of mentality, right? So they
yeah.
end up writing stuff down on a piece of paper. They end up telling people in words like, hey, I want you to keep my car and I want you to keep my house. But of course, none of that is legal, right? So
yeah, it's none of it is legal. And I've experienced that too. Like a lot of the elderly people, like usually the children would come to me and say, hey, this was left for me or meant for me,
right.
but they didn't do the right thing to sort of pass it down. And unfortunately, it ends up going through the court system in case. And sometimes if the person who passed is married, may not be the parent of the child, but if they're married, in many cases, it will go straight to the husband, or
right.
a majority of it will go to the husband.
Right.
And so if that's not what you want, then what you really need to do is put a plan in place, you know?
Right, exactly. And that takes me to the next question. So if there is no will, how does the next of kin, what is the proper order, right? Is it spouse, kids, you know, siblings, parents? How does that work?
Yeah. So every state is a little bit different, but generally it's going to work out in this order. So first it's going to be if you're married, if you're not married, it's going to go to your parents. If not your parents, then your siblings.
Okay.
If you are married, then it's going to tip it, and you don't have any children, then it's going to go to just your spouse, meaning not your parents, not your siblings. Doesn't matter if you were married 3 days. You know what I mean? It's
or if you're like separated even, right? Like if you're
correct,
not together, but you're legally married, it doesn't matter. The spouse will always get.
Correct. Yeah. So I know a lot of people in my communities, I'm not sure, you know,
same here.
They're not together. They haven't been together for years, but they're still married. And so that makes a big deal. That affects your Social Security. It affects your retirement if you have any retirement plans. So you really need to do things, you know, officially. If you're not together, you know, get a
legal
divorce,
separation.
Legal separation. Yeah, at least a legal separation, you know, things like that. All right. So then if you have children, it would be typically split between the spouse and the children.
Okay.
Like the first $50,000 or so, depending on the state, will go to the spouse. And then half of the rest will go to the spouse, the rest to the children.
Got it. And that's legitimate children, right? So not like my stepkids or like someone that I just took over when they were young, right? It's got to be a legitimate child. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Thank you for highlighting that. Yeah, if the child is legally adopted, then yes, it will go to that child. But if the child is just a stepchild and you haven't become the legal parent of that child, then that it wouldn't count. And a lot of people, you know, raise children that are not. They never needed anything official. Them something. They won't get it automatically, you know, unless you do so specifically.
Right.
Yeah. And then
makes sense.
Okay. Good. And then if you're not, if you're not married and, well, if your spouse is not alive, then just your children, everything will go to your children. If your children, even if your children predeceased you, it can go to their children if they have any.
Okay.
Right.
Makes sense. Okay, good. Good.
Yeah.
Good to know. And then how do you find out if a will is already in place? So let's say your grandparents passed, you don't know if they left a will or not. Is there a way to search for that?
So unfortunately, there isn't, because the wills don't become public until the person dies and you file it in court. So if the person passes away and you know that there's a will and you file it in court, then it becomes public. You could search the court records to see what that will says or what's, you know, involved in it. But and this is a big problem as well, a lot of times people want to hide the fact that they did estate planning or they want to hide what they're leaving to whom and things like that because they want to avoid having to deal with the conflict. But all it does is it causes conflicts for the family, or whatever you prepared and planned for could just, no one knows where it is and no one knows that it existed, or somebody who doesn't like what it says finds a way to get
it. Yeah. It's very tricky. And again, it's something that we want to continue to talk about, right? Because it's like, you should be estate planning. You should be having your things in order. It doesn't matter if you have, you know, $1,000 in your account or if you own a property. Like, you should want to make sure that what you own goes to the appropriate person or people without feeling guilty about it. Like, you know, it's your stuff. You worked for it.
exactly. And I usually encourage my clients, like, please have these conversations, talk to the people who you're putting in place. If it's the executor for your will, or if it's a trustee, talk to them and, educate them on the assets you have, educate the people who you're leaving assets to. Like, for instance, real estate. If you're leaving real estate to somebody, they need to know what to do with that. They need to know how to handle it, how to deal with tenants, how to, all these type of things, how to go about getting a mortgage or a refinance, and things like that. So that's also part of the process. Like, there's a responsibility with owning assets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you did it for nothing, which I doubt,
Right. And then in that case, so if you own properties and you are deceased and you leave it under the will that this person will now take over the physical assets and manage them, how does it work with the bank? I guess with the bank side, it would just be a matter of like transferring over the debt to the new person that's named on the will, or?
So no. So in terms of, you saying like with the mortgage?
Yeah, like if there's a mortgage left on that property, what does it mean that the person that's named on the will as the, grantee or whatever, are they now responsible for that loan?
So they're responsible for that loan in the sense that it's attached to the asset, right? So it's still secured by the property, and therefore the loan will stay with the property. It's not going to transfer into the new owner's name unless they formally go to the bank and assume it, through the bank. It will just stay there. Like, you could just keep paying the mortgage on it. Some banks might be proactive and say, hey, you got to do something, but as long as you're paying for it, typically they can't really force you to, to take it over.
Gotcha.
They could decide to foreclose if they want, but
right. As long as you're paying it, or someone's paying it, it should be good. Okay, got it.
But there's also some strategies that you could do. Like, if you wanted, for instance, your children or whoever your heir is to take over the property debt free, you could say within your document that you want whatever liquidity you have to pay that off, or you can do an insurance policy to pay off the mortgages, and then that way they could take it over debt free.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. Debt and taxes. So folks are like, oh, so and so passed away, they owed 50 grand. I don't need to pay that back. So how does that work? Because I've known other people that get so concerned about the debt that this person is leaving behind, but I don't understand like the legality behind, who gets penalized if the debt is not paid, kind of thing.
Yeah. So typically the debt is going to be paid through the estate. So what that means is that whatever assets that are of value, like if you're having to go through the court system, whatever assets are of value may have to be sold to pay off certain debts. Okay. So if there's like I said, if there's no insurance policy or anything else that's provided to pay for the debts, then some of the assets may have to be sold. Now, the spouse typically is not going to be responsible. Children is not going to be responsible generally. Okay. But there are some states where if you're married, the assets could be considered community property. And that kind of means that you both own it. So the survivor would be responsible for the debt.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like the popular states is like California, Texas, I know is another one. And there's another one, Washington. Okay. Those are like, the bigger states where those are community states. So the spouse may be responsible. And if you co-signed for somebody who passed away,
then you're responsible.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So New York, New Jersey is not a community state, right?
No.
Just to clarify. So that's a good point because, so a lot of people just assume that because you're married, you legally have to take the other person's debt. Mm-hmm. So it means it's really depending on what state you live in. So
yeah, it depends on what state you live in, and as long as you didn't own the debt yourself, then you wouldn't be responsible. But whatever they had of value, that could be caused to be sold to pay off the debts.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, I think we have a question. Let me go back to Michael D says, thanks for having this conversation. I'm currently dealing with a tangled deed in Philadelphia. Me and my wife are also working on getting our estate in order. So what is a tangled deed? What does that mean?
I'm not sure what he means by that. Maybe he can give a clarifying question.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Just elaborate a little bit if you want us to talk about that. And then PA is not a community state, is it?
No.
Okay, so no, PA is not a community state. Someone asked about that.
Yeah.
All right, good question. Good. I think I have one more.
Okay.
How do you protect your assets? So estate planning. So can you give us a little bit about that process? Like, how do you estate plan with a client of yours?
Yeah, sure. So typically how we start the whole process over is we start over with sort of like a discovery assessment. So that's pretty much like a questionnaire where it kind of goes through what exactly do you own, period, of value. Are you married? Are you single? Like, who's in your life? Who would you want to inherit your assets and things like that, so that we can get a clear picture of all what you have and what's important to you. And that's the best way to be able to sort of strategize around, what's the best way to protect you.
Right.
Because with this type of planning, it's very personal, it's not really cookie cutter. So depending on what you want, we might do something different, versus someone else with the same amount of assets. So once we kind of get that back, we'll then have a conversation about what's in your estate. What are you looking at in terms of what will go through probate if you went through the court process, which is either with a will or without a will. And we'll talk about estate taxes. Are you expecting to pay estate taxes based on the amount of assets that you have? So right now with the estate taxes, federal, it's 11.7 million, you get an exemption, meaning if you don't have more than that, you don't pay an estate tax.
Oh, good. Okay.
On the state level, it's like 5.7 million, but under the new administration, it may come back. I mean, it may come down is what I'm saying. So it's always good to kind of keep an idea of that as you're building wealth, because you could easily get there with real estate,
Yeah.
Exactly. So we'll go through those two comparisons to kind of make you aware, and then we'll talk about, in detail, what's a will, what's a trust. We may talk about, or usually we'll talk about a power of attorney, which I explained, healthcare proxy, which is something similar that allows you to allow someone to make health decisions for you if you're in the hospital. Okay. A lot of people think like, oh, my spouse can handle it, or my sister can do it, but it's not automatic that they will be able to make those type of decisions for you. Yeah, even if they're a family member, they don't necessarily get to make those decisions for you. So it's really important to have stuff like that in place. So we'll talk about that in the context of what you have and whether or not it sort of makes sense to you, what makes the best fit. Then we'll talk about transferring assets, once we finish the planning, because if you have a trust, then we're going to need to transfer your real estate into the trust. Okay. So if anyone ever gets a trust created, know that the trust is like worthless if you don't put any assets in it.
Oh, wow.
You have to title your assets in the name of the trust in order for the trust to be able to control. Sort of like a business. Okay. A business can't do anything if it doesn't own the asset, right?
Exactly. So
that's kind of how it works. And and then we'll usually paint a picture. We'll strategize like what's the best way to sort of protect you. I mean, does a trust make sense for you? Does a will make sense for you? Do we need to incorporate business entities and things like that? Like, are there agreements that might be missing that you might need? So that's sort of like the process that we go through to see, what's best for you. How can we best protect you?
That's great. Yeah, that's good. Definitely good information. And then something that came to mind. So for an adult that has assets, but that have no children or no spouse or even no living parents or no next of kin, like what happens to those assets? Does the state take over? Like, because I've seen a couple of notices like that, like on the paper, back in the day you would read them and it's like claim so-and-so's assets. Call his number, and I'm like, what is that? So
there's a lot of scams out there, but there's also, every state has a Department of Unclaimed Funds. So eventually those assets can end up in that Department of Unclaimed Funds. And right now New York has like $16.5 billion in assets that nobody claimed. So that could be, eventually the state will sell it, and it would go to them if literally nobody else comes and claims it. And just because you're single and you don't have children doesn't mean that you necessarily just building your assets for no reason, right? So you may have a niece, a nephew, a cousin, or you may have a cause, a charity, or something that you leave your money to. Like, it's your legacy. You can decide what you want it to do. Maybe you want your community to benefit from it somehow. So you get to decide and put those type of things in place.
Right, but you have to take the action and actually.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, because then you could run the risk of it just disappearing into that big bucket that New York has of unclaimed money.
Right. Okay. And then also beyond that though, because like single people without family, as they age, they can be preyed upon by unfortunately our very own government, right. Like the counties, and they may come in to see an opportunity where these properties can be had and things like that, and sometimes their rights get taken away. Like, for instance, they could say, well, you're not mentally fit and you need a guardian. There's actually a movie out, which I really don't want to watch it because it makes me so mad, because I know it really happens.
Wow.
It's on Netflix. It's called I Care a Lot.
Okay.
And it shows how this woman came up to this very perfectly fine elderly lady, and she's like, oh, we don't think that you're fit, to care for yourself. Sometimes it doesn't happen in that way, but it's extreme. And so they put her in a nursing home, they medicate her, they take control of her assets, and they start doing whatever they want with it, basically. That's crazy. And so it happens in different ways, like if you're old, you fall, you end up in the hospital. Instead of you going back home, they might say, okay, you got to go to rehab. Okay, you can't take care of yourself, you need a guardian. We'll appoint a guardian. Then the guardian just starts making all these decisions for you and things like that. Like I've seen it happen, even for my clients. And so unfortunately, like I had a client, it happened to her grandmother. They didn't know that this is how the process works, right? So by the time they came to me, the state was already guardian over her grandmother. And even to like reverse it, we had to go to court for months just to have her appointed to take care of her own grandmother. You know what I'm saying?
Like, wow.
So for single people, don't overlook the power of attorney and healthcare process. It sounds simple. It's very inexpensive as well. But it is very important.
Good. I'm glad we touched on that elderly portion, because I think that, we sometimes forget that they too have rights that could be taken away from, if you don't step in as, grandkids or grandnephews, great nephews, or whatever, nieces.
So, and sort of check in on them and make sure that, because they can also be easily manipulated into just signing things over, because sometimes people come, they befriend them, and they kind of hang around and come back and forth, and then next thing you know, they're signing over their stuff because they don't quite understand.
That's
it happens
crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So what anything else you want to share with us? So a lot of the audience, they were so excited when I posted that we were going to be talking. I got a bunch of DMs like, oh, I'm at work, but I'm going to try and take my lunch break around that time. And so I know that you have a YouTube channel. I went in there the other day. So talk to us about that and the information you're posting.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. So I do post content about legacy planning, protecting your assets. I talk about business stuff. I talk about trademarks, which is something else that I do. Because you guys have businesses. Depending on your business, it may be something that you might want to also consider, because it helps you build the equity in your business.
Right.
And then I also talk about the spiritual side. So I have
I love
series.
That.
Thank you. I have a series I do on Sundays called Be Inspiration. And it's just kind of like things that I, apply in my life that can help people. I might talk about situations that I've been through or things that come up during the week. And so I post that, and I don't know, it's part of my purpose part.
Awesome. It's got to be well balanced, So
yes.
You got to have a little bit of that in there. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Especially when, in business, whether you're building wealth for yourself or you actually have a business, or, or even a 9-to-5, like you need to focus on the mental aspect. It's key. Yes. Like we're all affected by it in somehow, some way. And so you need to take care of that part.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, I'm going to keep it short because I know you're busy. You're a busy woman, but I appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Any more questions? There was no more questions?
Any more questions, guys, that you guys want to chime in on? Let me just scroll here and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, we do have a few actually. Okay. So Michael says, my grandmother and mother co-owned the house. My grandmother passed away mid-2000s, but did have a will.
Okay.
My mom passed in 2020 and willed the house to me and my 2 other brothers.
Okay.
So because there are 2 names on the deed, they considered it a tangled deed.
I got it. So, I wanted to know mom had ever gotten the deed passed on to her through the court after grandma died. But in any event, what you really do need to do is probably do a probate for both grandma and mom if grandma's was never done. And then that way you'll be able to get it in your name. But it's gonna be a process of going to court, getting the court to open up really a lawsuit on each person's estate. And then that way it could be settled. Because there's a will that's going to work in your favor, it should be quicker. However, you need to make sure there's an original. Because if it's just a copy, most courts are not going to accept a copy as law, basically. Right. So you need to make sure that it's an original. But yes, that's what you need to do.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. That was from Michael D. So D. Lee. So Michael, I hope you got that. Mike B says, I need to set up a trust. Well, hit up Sabine. She can help you with that.
Yes.
Let's see. My husband's being a fool. He said, the man taking your life's work. Oh, you're talking about you, the man, or the man, the tax guy? Okay, I got you.
I saw somebody who said, I need to set it up for my mom. Yeah. A lot of young people come to me to say that, like, they bring their mom, their grandma, their godmothers, and they're like, they need to do their planning, because if you are standing to inherit, or you're the person in the position to inherit, you want to make sure that you make it as easy for yourself as possible. So it's very common.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that, because again, the notion is with these older folks that they don't want to go through that process because they think it accelerates death or something, which makes no sense. But this is how they think. You know, the same with life insurance. A lot of people don't even want to talk about life insurance because they're like, you know, I'm going to bring death too close to me. They don't want to deal with it. Yeah. But
I mean, have the conversation with them that, you know, what they worked hard for, what they toiled over, you know, they paid mortgages for years and years, you know, like this is their asset. And if they don't do something with it, then it's going to be difficult for you, and sometimes maybe a loss for you. Right. If that's something that they want, you know, speak to that, the responsibility side of it, not so much the morbid side of it. Yeah. But
exactly. And also the fact that, you know, we might that they might think legally it works one way, but it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Most times people are surprised. They're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's what would happen.
Right. Especially with the spousal thing. Like, a lot of folks are like, oh, well, I've been separated for 20 years. How can you possibly get my assets? It's like, well, on paper, you're still legally married. So.
Legally married. And then sometimes people don't change, like, the beneficiary on, like, their either retirement accounts or their life insurance, and that will go to whoever it says, you know, whether or not you're divorced. So you need to make sure that those things are taken care of.
And the same with pensions too, right? So, like, because it's all part of the asset accumulation. So like,
so it depends on how you take it out. Sometimes there's not a death benefit left if you max out what you're going to get. But if you did leave a death benefit, then it's going to go to the person who's listed on there.
Okay. So got it. Sorry. Camaro said, hi, I am in Maryland and was told I need deeds to his house and garages, his bank statement and mortgage statement at his date of death, and also need to get an SDAT value. I'm not too clear about that.
Can you DM me? I'll send you an attorney in Maryland to help you with that.
Okay. Got that, Camaro? Just send Sabina DM. All right. And a lot of thank you for the live. You're welcome, guys. We're very happy to have done this. Let's see. Just scrolling up here.
No, that's fine.
Creative. Yeah. So you can make an appointment with Sabine. Just send her a DM. She said her mom is 78. She wants to set up her mom with a trust.
Okay. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So your contact information, you want to just give us a little bit. Sure. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. So you can DM me here, but even better is to email me at legacy@Franco, FRANCO -lawfirm.com. My website, franco-lawfirm.com. And and I'm on YouTube and here. So
yes. So guys, just hit the contact box on her bio and reach out to her. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you so
We'll
much.
Chat soon.
It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. So now you know how to find Mr. Bean.
All right. And keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an awesome job.
Thank you, hon. All right.
Welcome.
We'll talk soon.
You too.
All right. Bye.